I'm Dr. Maxine Bryant, and I am your virtual professor. It's been a minute. You can kind of say I've been on a break, right? Well, school is getting ready to start, and I am teaching one class this fall, and it's about equity or inequity in the criminal justice system. So I kind of want to talk today about some things around equity and justice. Now, one of the things as it pertains to the general community is how we treat one another. I was recently asked by a news station here locally about the stand your ground law. They wanted me to expound on that, and I thought that would be a good way to kind of reconvene the virtual professor. Now, it may sound like the stand your ground law has nothing to do with ethics or equity, but I want you to think again. So this law is intriguing, perhaps in part, because the case of Ahmaud Arbery. Now, his killers have said that they killed him in self-defense, and it's been speculated that they may try to use Georgia's stand your ground law as their defense. So let's examine the stand your ground law across the country. Now, first of all, you need to understand that in many states, there is a duty to retreat. As a matter of fact, that's where it started in almost all of our states. And what that means is that a person under imminent threat of danger or personal harm must leave the threat. They must retreat from the threat as much as possible before utilizing deadly force. Now, there are 15 states that still have that particular standard of having a duty to retreat. That includes New York, Iowa, and Hawaii. Now, stand your ground is a step away from the duty to retreat. In fact, it removes the duty to retreat, and it differs from state to state. So where it comes from, it's kind of called the castle doctrine. I'm king or queen of my castle, and I have the right to protect my castle. It's another term for it is the defense of habitation. Now, what the castle doctrine does is it limits the specific location where you can stand your ground to just your home. Now, you go away from that another step, and then you have the full blown out stand your ground. And there are 35 states, and 27 of them don't even have a duty to retreat at all. And 8 take it case by case. And what this means is that there needs to be a perceived threat of harm, and that the force against that perceived threat or harm must be reasonable, right? And so the person using self-defense has to be lawfully at the location, meaning they were supposed to be there. It was not against the law for them to be there, and that they are not the initial aggressor. Now, if they can't be the initial aggressor, it'll be interesting to see how the killers of Ahmaud Arbery can really use this. They initiated the aggressive action by chasing him with their guns in their truck, right? So that'll be interesting. As it relates to ethics and equity, what we do know is that laws are not equitably applied across all populations in the United States. That is against ethics as it relates to justice and law. Now, let's talk about Florida for a minute, because for many of us, we may have not even have heard of Stand Your Ground until George Zimmerman introduced it to us in the Trayvon Martin case. So Florida was the very first state to pass Stand Your Ground law, and that was back in 2005. All duty of retreat was removed. All. So you had no responsibility to back away from a potentially harmful situation with an aggressor. And the location was not limited. You did not have to be at your castle or on property that you owned, right? So another thing with that is that a claim of self-defense under Stand Your Ground law in Florida offer immunity from prosecution. That's why George Zimmerman wasn't arrested and indicted right away. They didn't have to do that. What does all of this have to do with us? Let's watch carefully cases that are coming up. Let's watch to see who uses stand your ground. What we do know is that stand your ground laws have not resulted in a decrease in violent crime. They've not made our community safer, which was the premise on which they started. When we go forth, as we go forth, I think when we think in terms of equity and ethics, we need to think about how we can be respectful to one another. When we are respectful to one another, we don't necessarily need laws to dictate. We need laws, but not to dictate specific behaviors under stand your ground or those kinds of defenses. And when we think about it, everybody, including our law enforcement officers, need to operate from a standard of ethics and equity. We don't see that a lot. Want you to have a good rest of the day. Just wanted to enlighten you about the stand your ground laws and how that can pertain to cases, even when it's not verbally or obviously used as a defense. We may or may not have known that the perpetrators in Ahmaud Arbery's murder were going to use that. Don't forget about that. Keep it in the back of your mind. We're going to be hearing probably more and more of that type of defense coming up. Take care. This has been your virtual professor signing out.